Welcome back, everybody, to the Greeks Gridiron. I am Ethan Christodoulou, and today we dive into the offenses of the NFC East, ranking them from worst to first inside their division. I invite you all to comment down below. I want to hear your thoughts, your opinions on the division here. How would you rank them? What am I getting right and wrong? And of course, make sure you're keeping your eyes peeled, because on this side of the screen here, if you're watching here on YouTube, you have the opportunity to win yourself one of 3 copies of College Football 25. I'll be giving away here. Again, that pop-up's going to come up on this side of the screen. You just have to find the code. Once you get it there, email it to my show email. First come, first serve. Whoever gets it to me first will receive their copy of College Football 25. But with all that aside, we're diving in, starting at the bottom, working our way up to the top here. And at the number 4 spot, kind of a little bit of a cut and dry one here. I don't really think that there's much of an argument, and I feel like a general consensus is going to be the New York Giants sitting at the bottom here. Although I do think there's a conversation to be had about maybe another team that is going to be ranked in this division as well here, but we'll get to them in a moment. The New York Giants, coming off of what was an absolutely injury-riddled season where you're starting 3 different quarterbacks. Saquon Barkley missed a bunch of time, and now he's no longer on the team. Darren Waller was supposed to be your tight end after you snagged him away from the Las Vegas Raiders. He missed time. Ultimately, he's not even on the team now as well. You got injuries at left tackle, at center, at right tackle, as all of your starters missing time there, and Andrew Thomas, Michael John Schmitz, and also Evan Neal as well. It was an injury-riddled season nonetheless, and it resulted in one of the uglier performances offensively that I personally think I have witnessed in the 20-so years that I've been watching football here. They finished 3rd lowest in points per game, 4th lowest in yards per game. They were the 3rd lowest in first downs per game, 3rd worst in third down offensive efficiency, and 2nd worst in red zone efficiency. The big question is, can this group improve? Can things get better? You're hoping for a healthier season. Hopefully, some of the issues that were plaguing you last year can maybe be adjusted and worked on and improved upon. And of course, Daniel Jones. How does Daniel Jones fare going into this season now? Your $140 million quarterback, one that a lot of people are wondering why he's making as much money as he is. The good news is, I will say that I feel like the Giants made a concerted effort to try to improve on the issues and just the overall offensive situation that they were dealing with last year. In the first round, you go after LSU wide receiver Malik Neighbors, someone who's coming off of back-to-back 1,000-yard-plus seasons at LSU. In 2023, he had about 1,600 yards, 14 touchdowns, averaging 17.5 yards per reception. This should be huge for a wide receiver room that's a little bit unproven, I would say. There's definitely some young and intriguing talent that you have there, but I don't really think that there was like a guy that you looked at and went, he's a number one. That's the guy that's leading the wide receiver group. Now, the trade-off with this addition here, obviously that happened in the offseason. Saquon Barkley, an electric guy when he's healthy, no longer with the football team. He's moved on to his division rival, the Philadelphia Eagles, and in comes in running back Devin Singletary. Now, the way I look at the Devin Singletary addition to this offense here is it's going to be somebody who I think is going to be solid and reliable, but I don't necessarily know if he's going to be like a game breaker for you. I will say that in 2023, he definitely surprised considering the situation in Houston surrounding their second-year running back that they had coming in. Devin Singletary obviously kind of overtook the role, surprised a lot of people, left Dameon Pierce kind of in the dust there as he took over and stole that spot with about 1,100 total yards. He had 4 touchdowns and averaged about 4.4 yards per touch. I think it's a solid addition and kind of a good way to stop the bleeding of a loss in a guy like running back Saquon Barkley. But I don't necessarily know if he elevates the offense any further, but he definitely at least mitigates the loss in some capacity. You also have some nice offensive line improvements as well, which I think is very welcomed considering this offense allowed 85 sacks, which was the most by 20 in the NFL last season. You bring in a guy in John Runyon who's been as steady as can be coming from Green Bay here with 50 starts in his last 3 seasons. You have now Jermaine Illuminor, I think is how it's pronounced. I could be saying that wrong here. He has 31 starts in his last 2 seasons. He's moving from right tackle over to the left guard spot, it looks like. At least that's what Our Lads has him listed as on their depth chart here. He played guard early in his career here, so that shouldn't be too bad of a transition for him. I think his first 4 seasons he was playing guard, so shouldn't be too much of an issue for him here. And I think this is great additions to the interior of the offensive line, a group that really needed some help coming out of last season here. You have some questions around the tight end spot and what exactly is going to happen there. Daniel Bellinger is listed as the tight end one currently, and in the 24 starts he's had over his career, he's racked up about 500 yards and a couple of touchdowns. So it'll be up to him to elevate his game a little bit further and have Daniel Jones maybe be able to find him over the middle and open things up for the offense, especially for those receivers on the outside. And then you have other additions that you're looking at wide receiver and guys like Allen Robinson, the ageless Allen Robinson. We have Isaiah McKenzie, Miles Boykin. So there is some intrigue as far as that group is concerned here. The way I look at New York is you're kind of just hoping for the best, and I hate to kind of put it that way, but that is my honest feelings towards New York right now, is that I'm just hoping for the best, and I'm hoping that they can somewhat improve on the situation that they were dealt with last year. I'm curious to see how much the loss of Saquon Barkley does for this offense here, and I'm curious about Daniel Jones's health. How well does he play? Can he, earn himself that $140 million that he's being paid right now? Is it going to be worth the while of the New York Giants? And does this offensive line, which again allowed 85 sacks last season, does it take a step forward in the right direction? I genuinely hope so, because I look at this group and, I look at the offensive tackles, pretty talented guys on both sides there. I think both guys that you're bringing in to fill out the guard positions now as starters should be improvements over what you had last year as well. So I'm definitely feeling better about the O-line altogether, which should help this offense, but there was a lot more that needed to be adjusted and fixed, and a lot more that needs to go well for New York for me to be able to have put them any higher than number 4 right now. Now, looking at the number 3 team, we have ourselves, and I kind of alluded to them earlier, the Washington Commanders here. Now, I'm excited to see what Cliff Kingsbury does as the offensive coordinator here, making his return after a quick little stint in USC last season after getting fired by the Arizona Cardinals. Obviously, Cliff Kingsbury making his name known via the guy that was being the head coach of Texas Tech while Patrick Mahomes was around, kind of the reason why I would say he maybe ended up landing himself a head coaching job in the NFL. This is another NFC East team that dealt with, again, pass protection woes. When I said the Giants were in first by 20 sacks, the team that was behind them, not right behind them, but was behind them, right behind them, I guess, in terms of rankings, but not necessarily the amount of sacks, 65 allowed in 2023. The second worst in the NFL was the Washington Commanders here. But I will say that I am really looking forward to what this offense can potentially turn into here. Obviously, you have a first-round quarterback in Jaden Daniels coming in, and I think you have a lot of exciting skill talent to work with over there in Washington, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what we might possibly get out of Jaden Daniels here, because there's been a lot of conversation surrounding his size and how he's going to hold up in the NFL, but now we're kind of seeing this wave of some of the vet quarterbacks, guys like Lamar Jackson and Tua, all coming in, and they're slimming down on purpose here, all roughly around maybe the same size, maybe slightly bigger than Jaden Daniels, so I'm actually really interested to see how things shake out for him. And when you look at kind of the turnover for the offensive side of things on the Washington Commanders roster, there's really not a whole lot. Your biggest losses were Curtis Samuel and Antonio Gibson, wide receiver, running back, respectively, at their positions there. And you did a good job of dealing with those losses. You have running back Austin Eckler, who's coming in here and coming off of a quote-unquote down season that it ended up being with over 1,000 total yards and 6 touchdowns altogether. This is someone who, prior to that season, the 2 years before, and I understand he's getting closer to 30 and maybe he's on the downtrend, we'll see. I kind of still think he has some juice in the tank because he's just such a versatile running back. From 2021 to 2022, we're talking about 3,200 total yards and 38 total touchdowns altogether. If he can even get somewhat close to that season-over-season production he was dealing with over those last couple of years, and you have to remember, there was a lot going on in LA for the Chargers that I don't really want to sit here and look at Austin Eckler and go, he's approaching 30, he's on the downtrend. I honestly think that the situation that was kind of going on in LA last year probably had something to do with those issues, and I think in a better situation with a young rookie quarterback that's going to rely on the talent around him to help ease him into the NFL, if there was a guy that you were to look for, to a veteran leader kind of guy to bring in and have on your roster, Austin Eckler is not a bad guy to have there. A beautiful compliment to Brian Robinson, who showed he has plenty in the tank despite what happened to him last season and him being able to battle back from that gunshot injury and make his presence felt over there in Washington. You also have yourself a third-round pick in Luke McCaffrey, wide receiver Luke McCaffrey, the brother of Christian McCaffrey, a quarterback turned wide receiver who Through 2022 to 2023, had about 1,700 total yards. You're looking at 19 touchdowns and about 13 yards per reception here. Someone who had a wildly similar combine numbers to his brother Christian McCaffrey at that. All I've got to say about that addition here is, one, if he even ends up being somewhat as good as his brother as a wide receiver, and maybe they can even line him up out of the backfield as well as a runner, a receiver as well, however they need to work that out, the Commanders got themselves a steal. I am very excited to see what Luke McCaffrey turns into, and I really think that despite because Christian came in obviously with a ton of flair and obviously a ton of hype surrounding him with what he was doing while he was in college here. Luke McCaffrey obviously taking a little bit of a different route through his college career here, but I will say that with all the physical traits matching up fairly nicely, and again, combine numbers are very close to what his brother does, I think he's going to be picking his brother's brain a lot, and he's going to want to live up to the hype around his brother and also what their dad was able to do in the NFL. Again, if he's even like half as good to maybe like 3/4 as good as his brother is at what he does in the NFL, I'm really excited to see what he does for Washington. There was a solid effort to improve the offensive line here as well. We're looking at a new center in Tyler Biadasz coming from Dallas here. 49 starts in his last 3 seasons. Rock solid addition there, I would say. And then you have a guy like guard Nick Allegretti coming from KC. Played in 70 games in his last 4 seasons here, but only 13 starts. So this is going to be his opportunity because he's currently listed as a starter on the depth chart, again, per Our Lads. But it'll be his opportunity now to be the guy at his position here. So I'm looking forward to seeing how some of these upgrades to the O-line work out for Washington. And then the tight end position getting a little bit of some changing going on here. We, of course, have veteran Zach Ertz coming in here, replacing Logan Thomas, who had been the guy over there in Washington the last few years. And then second-round pick in Ben Sinnott, who gets to learn behind a vet in Zach Ertz, who, for what it's worth, when he was good, he was very good. And, the fall off of Zach Ertz is one of those things where, you kind of have to look back and, you can appreciate how good he was early on, but it was a quick drop off for him, whether that's situation or just overall his abilities kind of getting away from him early, who knows? But when he was good, and a guy that I think it is worth having on the roster to teach a young guy in like Ben Sinnott, who, he had himself 80 receptions, about 1,100 yards and 10 touchdowns during his time at Kansas State. So looking forward to the upgrades and additions to this offense here. I think that Washington's potential upside is one of the more intriguing ones in the NFL here, because if Jaden Daniels can be as good as people are hoping that he can be in Washington, a second pick in the NFL draft type of selection here, the sky is the limit because you have a really talented group of skill guys here. I would argue that this group of wide receivers, at least like the starting trio of Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson, and Luke McCaffrey, have one of the more exciting ceilings to look at altogether. I think that's an excellent starting trio of guys here, and you have some excellent depth behind the wide receivers as well. I'd argue that they're one of the better in the division here, and they have a good conversation for that. Beyond that, though, you also look at the running back room. I think it's a really strong pair of guys there. Tight end will be a little bit of a question mark, and obviously the O-line needs to take a massive leap, but I'm honestly less concerned about like what Jaden Daniels is going to look like, and more so just, how ready is he going to be? Because this is someone who has a ton of talent around him, and he himself is also very physically gifted. So I think it really just comes down to, how does Cliff Kingsbury build an offense around Jaden Daniels and maximize the amount of talent that he does have surrounding him? Because I do think that Washington right now at this current state is probably the best group of skill guys they've had in quite some time, in the last few years at the very least. So we're really looking forward to seeing what they're doing. But number 3 for me in the NFC East. Now, moving in to number 2 and number 1, this is where I'm sure I'm going to hear it, and I'm already anticipating it. I can't wait to hear what everyone has to say. But I decided, after some seriously long consideration on this one here, at the number 2 spot, I'm going to go the Dallas Cowboys. There was a lot of consideration into this one here, because when you look at Philadelphia and what they have on their roster, you're basically just hoping that whatever happened last year does not happen again this year. When I look at Dallas, uber talented unit as well, a lot of guys that I'm excited to see play here in 2024. However, I do have a couple of concerns, and we'll get into that in a second, though. But when you look at this team, Brian Schottenheimer taking over last year at offensive coordinator, this offense was arguably the best in the NFL when they were playing at their very best. When you look at what they did, CeeDee Lamb had his career best by far. It wasn't even close with Schottenheimer's system here. Dak Prescott also hit career highs in completions and touchdowns, leading the league with 36. He had the second most passing yards in the NFL as well. The team altogether finished in first in points per game, fifth in yards per game, and they were second best in third down offensive efficiency. We've seen some significant changes to the offense, and I'm interested to see how things play out. And some of those changes and some of the losses that we're seeing from Dallas is kind of what held me back. But again, on top of, and I'm sure that and this is kind of the luck that I have right now as I'm recording this, and I'm sure as soon as I mention my contract concerns with Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb, by some miracle, they're both going to get their contracts signed and done as I'm uploading this. So we'll see if that changes between now and when you guys actually see this all. But the contract situations do have me a little bit nervous with, CeeDee Lamb missing time and then him and Dak not having that time to, ramp themselves back up and get things rolling again. I am a little bit concerned about that, but there's also some of the changes as well that we got to look at here. Running back's going to look a little bit different now. Zeke Elliott is back, and he's going to be rocking number 15. So all you guys rocking Zeke jerseys, or women rocking Zeke jerseys, you're going to have to get a new one if you want that number 15 instead of the 21 you already have. Despite his the numbers dipping down last year while he was in New England, that kind of felt like a vacation more than anything else for him, just keeping himself in the league here. But when you look at his last two seasons in Dallas, yeah, the yardage numbers might have dipped down, but he still racked up 24 touchdowns, 12 apiece in each of those last final two seasons he had in Dallas before leaving. I'm curious to see how he fares back in this offense where the attention is going to be on a guy like CeeDee Lamb, where you don't really have to, when you look at the Patriots situation last year, you're probably looking at a lot more stacked boxes than anything else. Like Zeke was like the big name, like the name brand threat, I guess you would say, from the Patriots offense last year. So things should probably open up for him a little bit here. I believe in the offensive line a little bit more than I do New England's offensive line currently. So I will say that about what the situation currently is like in New England. So I will take Dallas to give him a better opportunity to succeed a little bit more with more threatening pieces surrounding him. On top of that, a lot of the offensive additions for Dallas all coming through the draft here. You have your first round pick on left tackle Tyler Guyton, who according to PFF only allowed 3 sacks on 755 pass blocking snaps at Oklahoma. So a guy who is known for his pass protection ability on the left side here. He's, of course, going to be taking over for Tyrone Smith, who departed this offseason. You also have a third-round pick in center Cooper Beebe, who is a unanimous first-team All-American last season, someone who is going to have an opportunity to potentially steal that starting spot because currently, right now, he's actually not listed as the guy in the starting role. That is Brock Hoffman, so just keeping an eye on that position battle as we work our way through training camp and through the preseason. You also have some late day 3 selections in a 6th-round pick in wide receiver Ryan Flournoy, and you also have a 7th-round pick in guard Nathan Thomas. Now, my biggest question really is just how much is this offensive line going to what are the growing pains, I guess, going to look like, if you want to say, with these changes here? Like I said, Cooper Beebe slated as the number 2 guy at this current moment. I would think that maybe Dallas would hope that he can beat out Brock Hoffman. And, of course, Tyler Guyton, he is going to be the guy at the left tackle spot. So some significant changes there. And this is one thing I always talk about. Changes at center do not get talked about enough. I definitely think it's one of those things that needs to be recognized more because the center is the quarterback of the offensive line. Sometimes, and it depends on the situation and depending on the skill level of the quarterback and just how much control they have on the offense, sometimes it's the center that is making all of those adjustments when it comes to protections and whatnot. They're getting the info from the quarterback and they're spreading it out. Sometimes it's the quarterback dealing it out, but I'm curious to see how that whole relationship change ends up adjusting, and how does that look? Because one wrong change and you're talking a blown up play and a mistake here or a mistake there for the offense, and if it fails on the offensive line, typically the play does not work out. So that is definitely something to keep an eye on. Also, on top of that, you're seeing a little bit of a change in the wide receiver room here. Michael Gallup is gone. He actually retired a few days ago, shockingly enough, but that knee situation it felt like he could never really get back to where he was prior to that knee injury here. So things opening up beyond CeeDee Lamb and Brandon Cooks, who I would argue are one of the better duos in the NFL. Brandon Cooks is a guy that does not get the love he deserves because he's someone that just has perennial 1,000 yard receiving seasons more often than not. So excellent combo there. But the guys behind him, Jalen Tolbert, Kevontae Turpin, Jalen Brooks, maybe even Ryan Flournoy now as well. When you look at the 2023 numbers combined minus Flournoy, you're looking at 40 receptions, about 400 yards, and 5 touchdowns. So curious to see where some of those changes end up. What does the wide receiver room look like, I guess, beyond CeeDee Lamb and beyond Brandon Cooks is basically what I'm standing at right now. Is I just want to see who steps up. Is it gonna, right now it's currently listed. We have Lamb, obviously, Brandon Cooks, and then Jalen Tolbert is listed as that third starting wide receiver there. So we'll see how that shakes out as we go through training camp and as we go through. But that's the current starting situation as far as a trio is concerned of wide receivers. How that shapes up, how that looks going into the season, and as we go through the season is definitely something I'll be keeping an eye on. But overall, though, I really like Dallas's offense. I do think they're one of the most talented units, and they, for a good reason, put up the numbers that they did last season. And again, aside from questions that I just need answers to, again, O-line and the time it takes for them to gel with their new additions, on top of that, wide receiver, what does it look like beyond the two, big names you have on that roster there, and how much just Zeke actually has left in the tank? The contract situations are probably my biggest concern right now. I want to see CeeDee Lamb get paid sooner rather than later so that they can just get back on schedule and get back to what they need to be doing here. Also, the conversation surrounding Dak Prescott's contract, how much of a distraction is that going to serve to things? I would hope it doesn't, but that is obviously something you have to consider as well. So with so many questions and just like some concerns here and there, again, nothing massive, but just a lot of little things, I settled on Dallas at 2. And then, of course, at the number 1 spot, we have ourselves the Philadelphia Eagles, as Kellen Moore is coming in now as the new offensive coordinator following what was a massive collapse of the Philadelphia Eagles, both offensively and honestly defensively last year. It was a team that, for whatever was going on behind the scenes, it felt like lost faith in what was going on. And we saw the results of that as we went through the final half of the season here. Now, there is so much talent on Philadelphia, and I'm sure that, the rest of you guys are all probably throwing up in your mouths as I sit here and praise Philadelphia, but this is what happens when the team is at number 1. They get a lot of praise. But Philadelphia, with the amount of talent that they have, they should not be anything worse than like a top 10 unit, and that's being generous. I would argue top 8 is probably the lowest that they should be at coming out of this season here. You have a franchise quarterback, of course. You have a top offensive line in the NFL. I'll let you all decide whether it's first, second, third, fourth, but it is amongst the best in the NFL. You have a litany of capable pass catchers as starters and some of the guys you have for depth as well. You just have to hope that whatever happened last year does not happen again this year. That's basically what I'm looking at right now. And when you look at what Kellen Moore has done with the track record of guys that he's worked with, I know last year with Justin Herbert and the Chargers didn't really work out because of the injury to Herbert here, but he does have experience with Dak Prescott and some pretty successful offenses while working with him in the Dallas Cowboys. Now he gets Jalen Hurts as well. He's worked with a lot of talented quarterbacks here, so good for him, but I'm curious to see what he can actually do with the amount of talent that Philadelphia has. And when you look at the changes as far as this offense goes, really not a whole lot. Cam Jurgens is obviously taking over at the center spot with Jason Kelly retiring this offseason. Philly's been preparing him basically since he got drafted for this job here, so it's not really something I'm too concerned about because Cam Jurgens was extremely talented coming out of college, and I think he's rounded himself out really well so far to this point in his career, so I'm looking forward to seeing him get the opportunity to work the job that he was essentially brought in for. Just Jason Kelce maybe stuck around a little bit longer than they were anticipating. Obviously happy to have him, but they probably thought he'd be gone sooner rather than later. Saquon Barkley is also the big addition here, as we talked about earlier with the Giants. He is joining this offense here to help take it to the next level. Someone who, injuries aside, has a career average of 4.9 yards per touch and 99 yards per game. The reason I'm saying just totals and touches in general and not just focusing on rushing is because he is as good of a pass catcher as he is a runner. This is someone that you can have him run legit routes with, and he can catch the football and make some plays. You bring in a guy that's averaging basically half a first down every single time he touches the football and about an entire football field every single game he suits up for when he's healthy. This is a huge plus for this offense that I think is really going to open up. And behind the offensive line that they have in Philadelphia, the sky is the limit for what Saquon Barkley can do. He just has to be healthy. That is the big thing there. You also have some other intriguing signings that I'm looking forward to seeing kind of play out here. You see wide receiver Paris Campbell, who In the one season he was healthy in 2022, he actually looked really good with the Colts here. The problem is his health, and he just can never seem to stay on the football field. I feel like he is always dealing with some form of injury, and he's always limited. And 2022 was the one time we actually got to see him approach the levels of what his talent is capable of doing. You also have a guy like tight end CJ Uzoma, who I think will be good depth for this roster here. Obviously, he's going to be playing behind Dallas Goedert, but not a bad guy to have behind Goedert as, a relief role, or just maybe if something happens for a week and Goddard's out. Wouldn't mind having a guy like CJ Uzoma, who when he had someone like Joe Burrow throwing him the football was very successful at the tight end spot. You also have a guy like right tackle Mekhi Becton, who injuries derailing his career and his progression overall, but this is a first round selection here who's playing in a backup role now for Philadelphia. If he's able to continue to work himself back to 100% and get the opportunity to really just get his legs back underneath him here, this could be a steal as far as depth is concerned for an offensive line. If he only has to play in a limited capacity here, I think this is a really good signing that is one of those under the radar things you probably won't appreciate at face value, but I'm sure Philadelphia fans, when he has to step in, as long as he's healthy, will be pretty happy that he's on their roster. Draft day selections, all day 3 guys joining the offense here. You had some offensive line additions in left guard Trevor Keegan and center Dylan McMahon. You also had wide receiver additions in, I believe it is Aeneas Smith, who averaged 15 yards per reception in 2023, and Johnny Wilson, big man, 6'6", averaging 18 yards per reception his last 2 seasons in college, and then a running back in Will Shipley, who had 33 touchdowns and about 3,300 yards while he was at Clemson here. I look at Philadelphia, and again, the collapse last year it's in the back of my mind. It's in the forefront of my mind. I think a lot of people have it somewhere in their head, hoping that whatever happened last year does not happen again this year. I'm going to err on the side of me buying in and believing in what could potentially be with this offense here. If that drama is left in last season, this is arguably one of the most talented offenses in the NFL, and they very well should be one of the best offenses in the NFL. Now, if they end up falling flat on their face and failing, that's going to be a problem, and I could see some potential changes happening as far as front office and maybe even coaching staff is concerned there. But again, my only concern overall for this offense is just where they all stand personally. If that is all behind them, Philadelphia has, from top to bottom, the best roster offensively, or arguably, I should say. I don't like to talk in definites, but I will say arguably top to bottom, one of the best offensive sides in the NFL right now. So they should be amongst a top 10, top 8, top 5 type of unit coming into next year. If Kellen Moore and Nick Sirianni can get their vision to come to life, you're going to have yourself a fun time watching the Philadelphia Eagles, I would say, in 2024. But those are my rankings. Fire away in the comment section down below. Let me hear your thoughts, your opinions. What am I getting right and wrong? All that. Looking forward to the hate. But feel free to discuss. As always, if you made it to the end, greatly appreciate it. I'll see you all next time. Have a good one.